Hey everyone, it's Tim here, and just before we get stuck into today's episode, I wanted you to be the first to know that at the very start of next year, we're going to be hiring a new podcast producer for the Topcast. This role will be of interest to any regular listeners of the show, that's you guys, who would like to take more involved action in its production and who has excellent organisational and project management skills. The podcast producer oversees the entire process from guest outreach to final publication, working with other members of our phenomenal team who do the audio editing and the uploading, timestamping, graphic design, etc. So if you're interested, please register that interest at topmusic.co/producer, that's /PRODUCER, and stay tuned for more announcements in early January.
So step one of my method is playing those chords in the left hand. I often start with a 1-6-2-5 progression, going down to 6. I'll do it in F.
Yep.
It's a better position on the piano. And something like Blue Moon in the right hand. Yeah, which everybody knows. Or it could be
Untitled,
there's a million tunes with that progression, including some of mine.
Hello teachers, welcome back to the Topcast, your official music teaching podcast. This is episode number 220 and we're getting very close to the end of the year, aren't we? Wow, how 2020 has flown, even despite all the challenges it's posed. It's quite an unusual year and I no doubt you're all looking forward to 2021 as I am. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking with one of Australia's most loved composers who will share his personal story of how he came to be teaching and composing music and also explain what he calls his improv system, which you'll just love if you want a unique approach to getting your students improvising. It's super simple and you'll hear him demonstrate it at the piano in today's episode. I can't wait to share that with you. Today's show notes and transcript are available as always at topmusic.co/episode 220. My guest today is one of Australia's best loved composers. He commenced piano lessons at age 7 and his interest in jazz dates from that time. He began playing for local dances and concerts at 11, a key element in developing his improvisational skills. In 1978, he graduated from the University of Adelaide with an honours degree in music, majoring in classical piano performance. Trumpet was studied as a second instrument and later flute and violin. Since then, he has enjoyed a varied career in music, including 8 years as a music lecturer with TAFE, contracts with the University of South Australia, and continues to be in demand as a professional musician, composer, speaker, and teacher. Well, welcome to the show, Kerin Bailey. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Well, it's been a long while coming. We've crossed paths at various conferences and I've played your music, I've taught your music, so I'm delighted to be able to introduce you to all our listeners. And you're basically a household name amongst piano teachers in Australia, but overseas perhaps a little less well known. So I'd love in this chat to find out a little bit more about your background and how you became such a loved composer here and to share your music with our audience around the world. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fabulous.
Well, Look, you are set up at a piano and you're a composer and you have great music. So do you reckon you could play something for us?
I could, yeah. I've got Blue Waltz up there, which is about a grade 3 piece.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
And it's short, so I'll just rip through that for you. I'll have to take the headphones off.
All right, let's do it. And then we'll get back to our questions. All right.
Okay. Naughty book.
Beautiful, yes. You may have heard some flapping of the pages. Poor Kerin, the book pages kept shutting the book on him.
Yeah.
Don't you find that annoying?
I grabbed a new book off the shelf.
So when did you write that one? Can you remember?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, 93.
93, okay.
1993.
Yep.
I wrote Jazzin Around 3 and 4 simultaneously together and published them together.
So Jazzin Around, is that your most well-known publication? I would guess it would be your most best-known series, I mean.
Oh, for piano it is, yeah.
Yeah. And there's 6 volumes, right?
There are now, yeah.
Yeah. And what else have you composed? You've composed for other instruments as well?
Oh, yeah, just about all the popular instruments.
Mm-hmm.
For example, well, that's 5 dances for flute and piano.
Right, okay.
I called it for flute and piano because the piano parts are difficult.
Yes.
You know, they're grade 7, 8 sort of a standard. And so are the flute parts there. Well, there's a couple of pieces in there in the syllabus, grade 7 and certificate in music, I think.
Right.
So
I remember
they're up there a bit.
Struggling through some of those, not those particular compositions, but some of those similar ones for when I was accompanying VCE students in the Victorian music exams down here as well.
Oh, right.
And those upper levels, I did a lot of accompanying, and sometimes those accompaniments can be really challenging.
Well, they are, yeah. They're semi-professional. My best seller is this one, Jazz Incorporated for winds and brass.
Right, okay.
That covers most of the winds and brass: flute, alto sax, trumpet, tenor, clarinet, and trombone.
Wow, okay.
So all the pop. They're easy. They're, grade intermediate. I mainly stuck with the piano. I've had success with the intermediate sort of stage with piano. So that Jazz Incorporated is intermediate level.
What do you most enjoy composing for? Which instrument?
Well, I was a trumpet player for a while.
Okay.
Well, for years, actually.
Yeah.
As part-time. So I've learnt flute. I've also learnt violin. I produced Jazzin Around for strings.
Right, okay.
I learnt the violin for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And that gave me a better understanding of the instrument, so I was pretty confident about writing for that. Yeah.
It must make it much easier when you already play the instrument. In fact, is it possible to compose well for an instrument you don't play?
It probably is. I've been a bit careful about clarinet.
Mm-hmm. So that's not an instrument you've played?
I haven't played the clarinet, no.
Right.
The flute gave me an understanding of it's the same fingering for saxophone, so I was pretty confident with that. But if I were to write for, say, a serious work for clarinet, I'd learn it.
Okay.
I'd learn the instrument for a while. Yeah.
Right.
But that's unlikely to happen.
I mean, it's a big commitment to learn another instrument in order to write for it. I've always wondered, in fact, Kerin, I don't know if you've written symphonies and things with whole orchestras, but how on earth does a composer know how to write for all the instruments of an orchestra?
That is a specialised field, which I haven't gotten into really.
I mean, it just blows my mind, really. And you've got the transpositions, you've got ranges, transpositions.
Yeah. I've left it a bit late to do that sort of thing. I mean, one reason I did learn the violin, I thought if I was ever going to write for orchestra, I'd have, more of an idea of what the strings do. But unfortunately, the strings book doesn't sell very well, so I never went on with it. I would have kept learning the violin probably, but even though I think it's some of my best work, unfortunately, it doesn't sell as much as the piano and winds and brass do. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm really keen to find out a little bit more about your background, actually, Kerin, because we've never chatted about it before. How did your early lessons as a child look, and what instrument did you start on?
I started on piano. I went to the Catholic school in Kadina, which is a country town, about 100 miles from Adelaide in the old scale. Started at 7, learned from the nuns, which was an interesting experience.
Oh, wow.
It was back in the days when you get a ruler whacked over your knuckles if you looked at the teacher the wrong way and that sort of stuff. That was a bit daunting. So I did the classical thing, went through the AMEB exams.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was about 10 or 11, my father had a dance band and they used to rehearse in the lounge room. So I was watched the piano player fairly seriously, and I started then playing popular tunes.
Okay.
I had a fake book with 600 odd tunes in it. And I went through it. I could play every tune in the book by the time I was 10 or 11, I suppose. And just, things like that sort of style.
Like a stride bass.
Stride bass. Yeah, I didn't know it was called a stride bass then.
Right. How did you know how to read the lead sheets back then? Did your dad teach you?
No, I taught myself that.
Okay.
I might have been given a bit of a hand by the pianist in the band. A guy called Ray Hocking was his name.
Right.
I also remember him. He taught me this boogie woogie bass.
Yes. Love it.
So I could rattle that off. And I found all that stuff more interesting than the classical pieces I was doing.
And that was around age 10, 11, did you say?
Well, it would have been 10 or 11 by then. Yeah, I can remember playing for dances when I was 11.
Wow, okay.
I was in grade 7.
And so were you still learning from the nuns at that stage, or had you
I
quit
was.
that? Okay. So you're doing classical there, and you were in your own time doing the jazz and the dance band stuff.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So take us through into your teens. When did you stop doing the classical? Did you get to a certain level and then just move over to contemporary?
I did. I got to grade 6. I think I was 14 by then. The nuns wouldn't teach boys over 14.
Okay. What? Why?
Stop. I don't know. That was
silly.
the rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very similar to me. I did my grade 6 when I was about 13 as well. And then I went in and started doing some jazz.
Yeah.
So what did you do after that?
Well, at 14, I badly wanted to play the trumpet. I discovered Louis Armstrong, Harry James, Dizzy Gillespie, all these guys. So I took it on myself to join the brass band.
At school?
No, the town band.
Okay.
The Kadina and Wallaroo Brass Band, it was called then.
Mm-hmm.
And my lessons consisted of the conductor, who was a brilliant trumpet player. He played in the original South Australian Symphony Orchestra. He gave me a cornet and said, well, you blow through here, and here's a book with a fingering in it. That was it. I mean, looking back on it, it was just amazing. I think I could have been a half-decent trumpet player, but I developed a very bad habit. I was trying to get high notes like Dizzy and Louis and those guys too early.
Right.
Developed a very bad habit. And when I went to the con years later, I did take trumpet as a second instrument, but I had to virtually start again.
Okay.
With a new embouchure.
Right. So were you one of the few children in the band?
I was probably the youngest member of the band at that stage, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of older people in it.
Mm.
Yeah, I was definitely the youngest at that stage.
And did you do any composing? Oh, hello. we have a new kitten that's just jumped on me.
Oh, beautiful.
Were you doing any composing at that stage yet?
No.
Okay. So when did that start emerging?
Well, I consider improvising composing on the spot. So the fact that I was improvising, just self-taught. In fact, I'm still self-taught. I've never had a jazz lesson in my life.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That people are going to be very surprised to hear that.
Yeah. But I've listened to lots of players.
I was going to say, you learn jazz through your ears, don't you?
Yeah.
You can hear the influence in your music of all the jazz you've listened to quite clearly.
Oh, yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, luckily my father had a record collection. He had an old wind-up 78 player. I mean, this is in the 50s, So I was born in 49.
Right.
And, Louis Armstrong solos, I could probably still sing them note for note.
Wow, that's amazing. You must have listened to them 100 times.
Oh, I did, yeah. Yeah, I loved it.
And so take us through your, as you left school, it sounds like you went to a conservatorium, did you say? Or you studied music?
Not initially. My parents channeled me into a good, safe government job.
Okay, what was that?
Then it was the PMG. I was a clerk in that's the post office.
Okay. Oh, Postmaster General. Yeah.
Yeah, Australia
Australia
Post, they're
Post.
called
Right.
now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So you were funneled straight into that from school, not to university then?
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I did that. Yeah, and I was 21, I think, 21 when I decided to get serious about classical piano.
Okay.
So yeah.
And that's
I got
having
that.
stopped studying it at age 13 with grade 6 behind you.
Yeah.
And did you continue playing classical music all through your teens?
Oh, no, not at all. No,
Wow.
but
Okay.
dance music and jazz I was playing.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what made you come back to it when you were 21?
Well, I thought I'd get serious. I thought maybe I could play professionally or teach. And my father, funnily enough, always drummed into me that the way to acquire a technique was through classical music.
Mm.
Although he didn't actually encourage that. He did everything. When I should have been practicing classical music, he'd have me jamming. He was a drummer. So
Right.
I'd be playing we'd do that for, hours, at a time.
That would have given you such a great understanding of styles in music and beat and rhythm and all those kind of structures too.
Absolutely, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So rhythm comes pretty naturally to me.
Isn't it funny? As a father, listening to my child who's really enjoying it, he's listening, he's playing, he's jamming, he's done 5 years of classical training, and he's a musician as well. Why did he send you to the post office? That seems maybe it was just what was done in those days, perhaps.
Probably was, yeah.
Mm.
And I wasn't smart enough to realise that, I could have gone straight into. Well, I probably needed another year or two's classical before I could have got into the con. But yeah, I could have started 5 or 6 years earlier. Yeah,
Right.
I wasted 6 years, but I was still playing.
I was going to say, I don't think that was wasted. I think that was
Not completely.
valuable.
No,
Yeah.
that was a bit lucky.
And so, did you get into the con in classical piano then?
I did.
Wow, that's amazing. So you did an audition?
I did. Yeah, I did
Yeah.
with Lance Dosser, eminent pianist in Adelaide at the time.
Right.
And I actually had the foresight to write to him before I did the audition, asking him whether he'd take me on. And during the audition, I reminded him of that. He'd forgotten, but he did remember with a reminder. And he said, "Yeah, I'll take you on."
There you go. And so you studied there for, 3 years, I assume?
Well, it was a bit longer than that. 4. I did honours.
Okay.
So I did a single study for a year, and then 3 years of the degree, and then I was invited to do honours, so I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 5 years I had with Lance.
Okay.
Which that's where I learned.
All classical?
Oh, yeah, purely.
You must have had a phenomenal technique by the end of all that.
I did. Well, I was playing, Ravel's Ondine and the Mephisto Waltz, Scriabin Sonata, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of that technique's gone out the window.
It's scary how fast it goes when you don't practice. I find the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I did keep it up until about 15 years ago.
Right.
And then I just got too busy with the publishing stuff, writing and playing.
So you get to the end of your conservatory degree, you're a phenomenal performer. There's obviously not a massive career path laid out for concert pianists, even in those days, I don't imagine. So what happened next?
Well, I got a teaching job.
Right.
Teaching piano. Yeah. For TAFE. DFE it was then, Department of Further Education.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go to Narracort.
Okay.
Which is even further from Adelaide than Kadina.
Okay.
About a 4-hour drive, actually.
Right. And you were teaching then young adults, would that have been if it was TAFE?
Mainly kids, actually.
Oh, was it?
When I first went there. And then I think a year or two after that, they brought in a ruling that I couldn't teach kids anymore. It had to be all adults.
Okay.
But I had a good boss down there. He allowed me to keep the best of the students on, or the ones that hadn't dropped out by that stage. So I did manage to keep a few kids going. But then we started a course with Rodney Smith, who was with TAFE in Adelaide, and he came down to Narracourt on a regular basis with I think it was a certificate in teaching or something. So I was able to teach. So with Rodney coming down.
Sorry, for people who don't know Rodney.
Rodney Smith.
Yeah.
Rodney Smith was the chair of the pedagogy conference when we did it in Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's still involved fairly heavily with that. And he also teaches at the now Conservatorium in Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, he's still going. But I kept the course going myself by teaching the teachers I think there were about 10 teachers from the southeast of South Australia. I taught them the piano component of the course. So that was good. That kept me on my toes and kept the classical going.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I'm keen to find out where the link to jazz composing comes in. Help me bridge that gap.
Yeah, well, this is, I went to Narracourt in 1978 and I found that the kids, like me when I was that age, weren't that wrapped in doing the classical repertoire. So I started writing little arrangements of pop tunes and jazz tunes, jazz standards. And, of course, you can't publish that. So I thought I'll write some original stuff.
Okay.
And I think the first year I was there, I had a batch of really good students that all got A+. So I wrote each of those kids a tune, a piece.
Wow. Okay.
Melinda's Mini March, for example.
Right. Was that one of your first?
That was my very first piece,
Was it?
yeah.
Can you play? Do you still have it in your fingers? Can you play a little bit of it for us?
I probably could, yeah.
Go on then. Let's have a listen.
Oh, sorry.
Ah, bravo.
Can't remember the last time I played it.
That was great. I remember that. I've taught that piece.
Have you? Yeah.
A number of times. I've heard kids play it at recitals. It's an absolute winner. Kids love it.
Yeah.
I think you've got the boppy rhythm, you've got the jazzy sound, you've got the jumping up to the top of the piano. Kids love all those things.
Oh yeah, the crossing over. Yeah, I did all that deliberately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was lucky with that. It got into the AMEB syllabus. I'm not sure how, but
someone found
I think it's actually still in there.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I think it's in the Piano for Leisure syllabus still.
Yeah, that's a great tune. So that was one of the pieces that you composed for one of your students.
Yeah.
Right. And I assume some of the other ones that we know from Jazzing Around might have been the other ones that you composed at that time.
I don't think many teachers get past the first piece in the book, actually. There were 6 pieces in that book, and that's the only one that ever...
That was actually a different book, wasn't it? That wasn't Jazzin' Around. Didn't it have a different name?
Oh, it was just called Jazzin' Around then.
It was, okay.
Yeah. And I got the idea for the different volumes from Christopher Norton. You know, microjazz 1, 2, 3, etc. I thought, well, if he can do that, I can do it. So it was 10 years later when I wrote Jazz Around 2. So then I had to call Jazzin' Around 1.
Ah, okay, yeah, because I remember 2 different volumes of it. The look of it and the collection, I'm sure there was some differences in there. But I remember Melinda's Mini March being in there.
Yeah, they're color coded. See, that's number 6.
Yeah.
That's the original.
So you obviously had success. The students obviously enjoyed them. How did the connection to being actually published and getting these out into the world, how did that work?
Yeah, well, that was difficult. I offered it to Allen's Music. Remember them?
Okay, yes, I do. So Allen's was big music retailer in Australia or just Melbourne? Certainly in Melbourne.
Well, they were based in Melbourne, yeah, but they had stores Australia-wide. Yeah,
Right.
huge company. Did lots for teaching and educational music.
And they were publishers as well as retailers, weren't they?
They were. They had a publishing arm called
That's right.
Allen's Publishing, I think.
Mm.
Well, I offered Melinda's Mini Masters to them, and they said, "Oh, it wouldn't sell. You know, we need to sell. Can you write a book?" So I thought, right, well, I'll write some more. I wrote 6 pieces, sent that off to them, and they still said, "Oh no, we need to sell 2,000. We don't think we could sell 2,000." But they put me onto an engraver in Korea.
Okay.
South Korea. So
Right.
I sent the manuscripts over there. They engraved it, sent it back, and I published it myself.
Oh, did you?
And I'm still publishing myself.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yep.
All your books are self-published, distributed in Australia through Hal Leonard, I think. Is that right?
Hal Leonard, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But self-published, there you go. I didn't know that, Kerin.
Yeah. Well, nobody's ever offered to take it off of me. For a while, I was associated with music sales.
I remember music
I think
sales.
they're still going, yeah.
I think they've been absorbed into Hal Leonard as well now. Hal Leonard's just
I think they have too. I think they're distributing.
Growing.
Yeah. Well, music sales are enormous, and they distributed my stuff for 10 years.
Right, okay.
Oh, they were 10 good years, actually. That helped to get it up and running a bit. Yeah.
Mm. So we've talked a lot about the Jazzin Around series for piano, and there's 6 books in the collection. Was there other music for piano that I've missed and I'm perhaps not familiar with?
6 Sketches
Right.
was my second. Can I show you a copy of that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, that is familiar to look at. Yeah, 6 Sketches, black cover with a picture in the middle, yeah.
Yeah, that's a Pro Harp,
Oh,
would you
right.
believe? Yeah. That's another story, but yeah, that was my follow-up publication.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd because I had success with Melinda's Mini March, which, as you said, was a sort of a crossover piece, midway between classical. There's some classical elements and some jazz elements in there. So I followed it up with 6 Sketches, and that sold reasonably well. I've sold about 6,000 of those, I suppose.
Oh, that's great.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reflection in the back, in the last piece in the book, that's in a couple of syllabuses.
I was going to say that would help heaps for a composer to be listed in a syllabus of some sort, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, without that, you wouldn't sell a thing, I don't think. Yeah.
Perhaps in Australia and the UK where the exam boards are big, yeah.
Probably different in America and where, they don't rely on an examination system as far as I know.
Yeah, different parts of America, some of them do have it, but yes, you're right. It's much more fluid. And I think then festivals and Stedfords and things like that become more popular and they have their own syllabuses.
Yeah.
So are you still composing today?
Well, I'm a bit sporadic with composing. Everything's about, 10 years apart.
Yeah.
I think that's my most recent.
Was that the flute and the piano?
Well, even that's 2010, the 5 dances for flute and piano. For the piano pedagogy conference, I wrote that one, Drowsy Bees and Butterflies.
Oh, right. That was 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, yes. Okay.
2017. So that's my most recent piano composition.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot more advanced. That's in certificate in performance.
Right, okay. Great. Okay,
AMEB.
so that's above grade 8 level for those not familiar with AMEB.
That is. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Was that a commissioned piece for the conference? I can't remember.
No, not really.
Okay.
How that came about, I was the coordinator. I was on the committee. I was the coordinator of the composition competition.
Mm-hmm.
And we did some publicity, and you'll probably know what I'm talking about here. 2 days before the deadline, we had 1 entry.
Oh, okay.
I'm organising, the concert is the closing part of the pedagogy conference. So I thought, what if we don't get many entrants? So I thought, I'll write a piece. And that was it. Well, once I get a thing into my head, I just go
right.
like a bull at a gate. I got the okay from the chair and the vice chair. So that's how Drowsy Bees and Butterflies came about.
There you go. And is that available that people could listen to you or watch you on YouTube, or how could people access that?
It's not on YouTube. I haven't done a YouTube version of it. I probably will. It is on my website. You can listen to the full piece. It's about 4.5 minutes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, if you go to that page, the Drowsy Bees and Butterflies page on my website, further down the page, you can click on the MP3.
That's great. What's your website address, Kerin?
It's www.kerinbailey.com.au if you want to.
Yeah. So KerinBailey. KerinBailey.com. Fantastic.
Yep.
We'll put a link to that in our show notes.
Okay.
Now, before we go, Kerin, I know that you give workshops to teachers and have done so, well, pre-COVID anyway.
Yeah.
And you've got a bit of an improv system. And I wondered whether we could finish today by sharing some tips from your kind of improvising that you teach teachers about that they could try in their studio.
Sure. When I started doing workshops for teachers, I went full on into the seventh chord system.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the triad. I added the seventh on top, which is more of a jazz chord.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is classical harmony. So you go up the scale, playing seventh chords. We're at number 5 now, the dominant seventh. 6, 7, which is a half diminished, and the top one. So you have to have those under your fingers before you can do much.
And you were playing them in your left hand, weren't you?
I was, yeah. A step before that, and I think this is a great exercise for students, is just playing triads. I'll do it with my left hand. So the major triads and their inversions. It's great to have those shapes under your fingers, I believe. And then the minors, of course. But it's not that difficult then to add the seventh on the top of that. And a lot of my pieces are composed using those upper, even like the 9th, 7, 9, 11, 13th, those sorts of chords. So a lot of my tunes are built using those components. But, yeah, teaching jazz, and this is how I teach my own students, I get them to learn those chords first, in every key, preferably. So 12
That's
keys.
a lot of chords. Yeah.
Well, it is. It's 60, actually. There's 5 different. In that system, there's a major seventh, a minor seventh. There's 3 minor sevenths, 2 major sevenths, the dominant seventh, and the half diminished. And, of course, if you flatten the seventh, that is the diminished. The diminished seventh, which occurs in the minor scale, actually. So step 1 of my method is playing those chords in the left hand. I often start with the 1, 6, 2, 5 progression, going down to 6. I'll do it in F.
Yep.
It's a better position on the piano. And something like Blue Moon in the right hand. Yeah, which everybody knows. Or it could be
Heart and Soul.
There's a million tunes with that progression, including some of mine.
But I like that you're using seventh chords in the left hand rather than straight triads, because I'll often introduce Heart and Soul with straight triads. But it does add that. I mean, as soon as you add sevenths, you have such a much richer vocabulary, and you've got more notes in the right hand that work with it too, right? Right.
Exactly.
You can make more mistakes in inverted commas.
Yeah.
So what were those 4 chords that you were playing, just so teachers listening can try them out themselves?
Well, the 1 chord, so in the key of F, F major 7. The 6th chord. Now, notice I'm going down to 6 because it's closer. If you go up to 6, it's a long, big jump. So down to 6, up to 2, which is G minor 7th, down to 5. Once the student is comfortable with that, then I introduce inversions.
Right, Okay, so you're starting with root position of the F
Root position.
major 7 chord, and then you're using an inversion. It's and that's where we start teaching the students how to be most economical with the movement of the left hand.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a rough rule in jazz where the second finger is on or around middle C.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that progression I just played you, my second finger was on C and D.
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, it's good voice leading.
That's right. Yeah.
I
knew there was a word for it.
Yeah. 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 So once it can play Blue Moon, then I introduce lead sheets.
Right.
So I believe reading lead sheets is a great tool for learning how to sight read, even if it's just the treble clef.
Mm.
Also, being able to read a lead sheet is a great facility to have for any pianist, in my opinion.
Oh, it's 100% vital, in my opinion, as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm with Margaret Bramman on this one. We believe that teaching chord symbols too is a great way to learn harmony.
Mm.
That's why my pieces, a lot of them, have the chord symbols on there.
Yes, I've noticed that. Yeah, I think it's a great skill to have. Students, should be aware of that. I mean, it's the easiest way to play tricky pop songs if they want to accompany themselves. Forget that written out, horrendously challenging rhythm. Just play the chords, keep time.
Absolutely.
Sing along. Yeah, I think it's so vital.
Yep.
Mm. Well, some great ideas there. And do you also, as part of that little progression that you were showing us, get them improvising with a scale in their right hand or a series of notes, that kind of thing too?
Yeah. Well, the next step, I suppose, is just arpeggiating those chords with the right hand. So, let me come up here. And then you can go up one. Okay.
What does that tune? What does that sound like? That sounds like something.
Probably is.
That's a 50
I'm just
tune.
running
I
up.
can't think of it. Yeah.
I'm just arpeggiating the chords. So develop a facility with that, and then you can use the modes. So if you're playing a 1 chord, just play the major scale. That's the Dorian mode. That's the 2 one.
Mm.
Mixolydian mode is on 5.
It's great because it then puts scale practice into some kind of gives it more value, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It's interesting about that chord system. I find that students suddenly it switches on a light. That when you get to the 2 chord in F, you've got to play a B flat. Otherwise, it sounds. You're out of the key. 4 chord. Yeah.
And that's why you recommend playing through the chords diatonically in a key first.
I do.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that now.
It really reinforces the key center and what key signatures are all about. Because most kids haven't got a clue. Like kids doing grade 7, 8 exams coming to me from another teacher, and they haven't got a clue what the harmony in the piece is all about, what key they're in, or, all this basic stuff.
And all of that, the harmonic knowledge, all contributes to an ability to sight read when you're actually sight reading music too. If you can,
I believe,
if you can instantly realize, okay, this piece is in B flat, so there's a limited number of chords really that this is going to be based on, probably. You can start predicting things, and that's why I think good sight readers can kind of blow your minds a little bit, because they can almost predict what's coming up before it's happened, and that's a true understanding of harmony.
It is, yeah. There are some awesome sight readers around. I mean, I'm not bad. I'm very good with the melody line and chord symbol.
Yep.
I often tell my students that I don't know how anybody can play a piece of music not knowing what chords and scales that are associated with those chords are. I couldn't do it, I don't think. I mean, it gets complicated when you get into avant-garde music, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even later Beethoven and Chopin. I mean, some of the chromatic movements and harmonies that those composers and Liszt use are beyond my comprehension.
Complex. Yeah.
But I'm always thinking and teaching my students, think of the chords. What is the underlying chords of this? Because that's what it's like, the scaffold of the building or the skeleton of a person. It's so fundamental, but so often neglected by teachers who are just focused on that. Read the notes.
Unfortunately, it is. So, I always impress that on teachers when I'm doing a workshop with them to think more about the harmony and pass that on to their students. It's interesting, Tim, that, I mean, most tutors, I don't teach beginners anymore, but, I mean, just about every tutor on the market starts with those three chords, 1, 4 and 5. And so the kids get a bit of a feel for it there. But then after the tutor, they sort of lose that ability with those chords.
Yeah, it's often not reinforced in the tutor book or the method book too. It's kind of introduced piecemeal.
Maybe not.
And then there's no connections made. I think so much of good quality teaching is about making connections between one thing and another thing, or old music and new music, or this chord and that chord. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, some good to chat with you, Kerin. always fun.
Too,
always fun to talk chords with other people. Most of my listeners know how passionate I am about helping other teachers understand and come to grips with that, because it really does just give so much more depth to a student's understanding of what they're learning, I think.
I'm sure, yeah.
So look, I think it'd be lovely to spend more time with you, but I'm going to start wrapping things up. Was there a little bit of a piece you could kind of play us out with? Maybe, did you even have a favourite in all of your piano works?
Not really.
Most composers say that to me. They couldn't pick a favourite.
Do you know Triplet Falls?
Yes, I do. I know it by name. I couldn't hum it to you, though.
Yeah, I could probably go out with that. That was a separate sheet. That's available as a separate sheet. It's 3 pages. That's in quite a few grade 4 syllabuses in Australia.
Yeah, I think that's probably
just about every syllabus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to play a little bit of that?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
You can just fade me
you.
out.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you so much, Kerin, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to connect with you. And a reminder that Kerin, you can find out more about his fabulous music at Kerin Bailey, KerinBailey.com. I'm not sure if it's .com.au, Kerin. Are you sure about that?
It can be. Yeah, both work.
Both work. Beautiful.
Oh,
and we'll pop notes, links to that in our show notes for episode 220. So, yes, over to you, Kerin. Thanks again so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim. Really enjoyed it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's interview with the fantastic Kerin Bailey. What a superstar. I've been looking forward to having him on the podcast for ages, and he didn't disappoint. with both just his wonderfully interesting story of how he came into music and also those great improv tips that he finished with. So I do hope they're useful for you, and try them out in your studio and let us know how it all goes. Now, don't forget to register your interest for the podcast producer role that we mentioned right at the top of today's episode. If that role interests you and you're a regular avid listener and you're good at organising other people and getting content out online, then you might be just the person we're looking for. So register your interest at topmusic.co/producer. Next week on the podcast, we're actually going to be revisiting an episode from our archives with the one and only Nick Ambrosino. Now, if you haven't come across Nick before, he wrote a couple of books, which I'll tell you about next week, that have changed some elements of my teaching forever. And they've even changed how I speak. Now, if you want to know how powerful this guy's ideas are, then you must tune in next week to find out more about what he said and how that changed my teaching. Until then, I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast from topmusic.co. We'll speak to you in 1 week's time. For more information about this episode and to find out how to enhance your own teaching, visit topmusic.co. You'll find everything you need for your studio, from lesson plans to cheat sheets, quick win teaching ideas, and guides on how to build your teaching business. Plus, you'll be connected to a global community of the world's top music teachers. And when you're ready, join hundreds of other teachers around the world by becoming a Top Music Pro member and get access to all our bonus content and flagship courses. And don't forget to follow topmusic.co on social media and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it. That's all for today. We'll see you in the studio.